amazing little card game, and it sounds good too. Do you often fantasize about running your own circus? If so, I have just the card game for you. Scout is a ladder climbing / hand shedding card game for 3 to 5 players. Yeah, sure, the box says that it plays 2 players, but to be honest, it kind of sucks with 2 players, and if you just have 2 players, you should probably play something else. And the idea of running a circus is pretty much non-existent because there is no theme here really whatsoever. Yeah, sure, they have names like Barbara the bicyclist, or Charles on the unicycle, or who could forget old Sue on the trampoline. But despite those things, this is one of my favorite small box card games. I'd like to take just a second and remind you, click that subscribe button, especially if you feel like my content is tolerable, informational, and entertaining. Right, Harley Dog? If you've been in the board game space for some time now, you may have played a game called Bonanza. It's a Uwe Rosenberg card game. It uses a bizarre rule where you're not allowed to organize the cards in your hand. Well, Scout borrows that rule and makes really good use of it. The goal of Scout is to get the most points or tickets by the end of the game. And each player takes a turn dealing out the cards, and you remove some cards depending on the player count at the beginning. And once you receive your hand, you do have the option of flipping the cards and using them as the other numbers. But you can only do that when you first receive your hand of cards. On their turn, players will perform one of 2 actions. They will either scout or show. Show is basically playing cards from your hand into the center of the table. You have to play a meld that consists of more cards than what's already out there. Some of the options are playing runs, such as 1, 2, 3, 4, or you can play matching cards, like a 3-3, or a 4-4-4. But the number of cards that you play has to be greater than what's in the center of the table. So say if there are 2 3s in the center of the table. Now, you could beat those 2 3s with, say, a run of 3 cards. If you played a 1, 2, 3, that would beat the 2 3s in the center of the table, since 1, 2, 3 consists of 3 cards. Now say that you can't perform the show action and have to scout cards. When taking the scout action, you can either take the topmost card and add it to your hand, or the bottommost card, but none in between. So for this, I may want to take this 4. Now when I take that, I can decide to use it as a 4 or use it as the 10. In this case though, I would like to take the 4 and I can tuck it anywhere I want. So if I tuck that right here, that is giving me a small run of 4, 5, 6 that I could use later. And that also makes the meld smaller for the next person to try to beat. And what I have to look forward to is if I could possibly play these 2 2s at some point, then that would close that in, and look at that massive run of devastation I could have later on. Bleh. So this kind of gives you some extra flexibility. Now when you scout and take one of the cards, or performers, the player who played that set in the center of the table, they get a ticket. So you're essentially giving them a point. So sometimes you have no choice in scouting and you have to take one of the cards from the center, but sometimes it's worth, even if you can show, sometimes it might be worth taking one of those cards if one of those cards will set you up for a big play later on in the game. And players receive a special token that once per round, they may scout and show in one turn, which comes in handy because the round ends when one player either runs out of cards or the meld that they played makes it all the way back around to them. So often in a 3-player game, if the other 2 players have to perform the scout action, that ends the round. And if you're stuck with cards in your hand, those are actually negative points that you don't get. So let's say at the end of a round, if I had 2 cards left in my hand, I do lose a point per card left in my hand, so I can go ahead and subtract those from the cards I took, and I have 1 ticket, 2 ticket, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 points. And at the end of the game, the player with the most tickets is the winner. So in short, play melds, don't organize your cards, get tickets, get the most points. That's Scout in a nutshell. My goodness, what a great game. Like I said, it does have its flaws. It kind of isn't that great at 2 players, quite underwhelming, and the theme is really kind of non-existent. But outside of that, this is a fabulous game. It's one of my favorite small box card games. I will say the teach though is kind of bizarre because you keep reminding people, no, you can't organize the cards in your hand. And sometimes it might take players a minute to wrap their heads around the cards that you play, the meld that you play has to contain more cards than what's already out there. So if there's 3 cards out there, you have to play 3 or more. And I say 3 or more because in this game, runs are less than matching cards. So a run of 1, 2, 3 could be beat by 1, 1, 1. So that's kind of something that sometimes players take a minute to wrap their head around. But once you get this game going, it runs so smooth and it is so enjoyable. The card quality is great. I do enjoy the aesthetic on this game, even though there really isn't like a whole lot of art to look at. I just like the way the purple tickets look. The little ticket tokens are great. Which reminds me, I was in Target the other day and I happened to see that Target has Scout, which is fantastic. I love seeing, hobby grade games make it to mass market stuff. However, I noticed that the packaging was like that weird packaging where there's like 2 decks of cards side by side. If you're familiar with games, it's like the worst possible packaging. And in that version, I don't think it comes with the tokens, because the little tokens are nice for keeping score. Anyways, it's definitely worth, in my opinion, getting the Oink original box. It's a perfect size too. The components just barely fit in. You can actually stick the game in your front pocket. It's that small, and there's quite a bit of strategy for a small rule set there. And the game of push your luck that you're playing, like, do I want to maybe give so-and-so a ticket by scouting one of their people and tucking that card in here and just make a monster meld, a big run or something that you can play, but hopefully the game does come back around to you. Maybe that show that a player played will make it back to them. Maybe the player to your left or the player to their left can't beat it, even though everyone's scouting, taking cards from it. So you got to weigh out, do I want to risk it and, add that card to try to come up with a bigger, more powerful meld later, or do I want to just maybe barely beat what's out there? So that way, then maybe the other players will start taking cards from my meld that I placed out there, and then I'll start getting tickets to pad up my score. So there's enough strategy there to think about and to keep the game interesting and fresh every time you play it. I have never had this game fail on me. 100% staying in my collection. Giving this one 4 out of 5 beard strokes. Chef's kiss. Amazing light little card game.